Welcome to Despicable Maine Deep Dive.
Good to be here.
Today on the show, we're asking, how did Hancock County get so corrupt? Or at least, how is it alleged to have gotten so corrupt?
Right, we're digging into the documents provided by a listener.
Exactly. The mission is to understand the claims presented in these sources, allegations about law enforcement, the judiciary, and especially this Next Step domestic violence project. Okay, so where does this story kind of kick off, according to the material?
Well, it seems to center, initially anyway, around Michael Povich's time as district attorney.
Ah, okay. And the document suggests that accusations of bias and maybe corruption started popping up not too long after he was elected.
Yeah, pretty quickly, it seems. The sources allege the sort of new normal emerged.
A new normal involving payoffs.
For leniency.
That's the claim, particularly for, acquaintances or connected people, trading lenient sentences for, well, payoffs.
Yeah.
Which sets a certain tone, doesn't it?
Right.
And then there's this photograph.
Yes, the photograph. This is presented as a really pivotal piece of the narrative.
Taken by a barmaid, supposedly.
Reportedly. And it allegedly captured Povich with two other attorneys, Peter Roy and Jeff 𡡀𡂃𡃃.
Doing what exactly?
The source claims they were using cocaine and splitting money. Pretty explosive stuff.
You can see why that would be a problem.
Yeah.
And the claim is this photo basically haunted Povich.
Until he left office, yeah. And more than that, the source alleges that for maybe 20 years,
20 years.
possessing this photo was like a get-out-of-jail-free card, immunity from legal trouble in Hancock County.
Wow. Is there any evidence cited for that beyond just the claim?
The source points to sort of local knowledge and also suggests the Ellsworth American newspaper's reporting, or maybe lack of reporting, reflected this reality.
Okay, so that brings us to the newspaper itself.
Yeah.
The Ellsworth American.
Right. The allegations here are quite serious, too. Not just that they missed stories, but that they actively downplayed local corruption.
While at the same time, exaggerating crimes of other people.
That's the accusation. And even fabricating stories, sometimes the claim is only the names might be accurate in some articles.
That's incredibly serious for a newspaper. Damaging, if true.
Definitely. And then there's the claim about website comments.
Oh, yeah. What about them?
The county officials actually monitored the Ellsworth American's website and would delete comments that were unfavorable to them.
So, actively managing the public perception online.
That's the picture painted, yeah. Along with this alleged payoff system.
Right. Someone named Preston could supposedly get names kept out of the paper.
While minor things, like an old parking ticket from the 90s, would just stay there forever, it suggests a very uneven playing field.
And this alleged control over information, the source uses a specific case to illustrate it, right? The fatal accident.
Yes. The Jill Isle case from April 2007. This is presented as a key example of alleged corruption and information suppression.
Okay, walk us through that. Jill Isle hits and kills Arthur Smith Jr. with her car.
Correct. And initially, the police reports cited by the source suggested, maybe rain and fog were factors.
But later.
Later tests allegedly indicated alcohol in Isle's system, so she faced some serious charges. Aggravated OUI, driving to endanger.
But the allegation is that nothing really came of it because of her connections.
That's what the source claims. It talks about this good old boys club, supposedly including Carlotta Basano, who later became DA, and Jeff 𡡀💃🃃.
Who Isle worked for as a paralegal.
Exactly. Part of his wrongful conviction team, a longtime resident. The source alleges there was an internal discussion, basically deciding not to prosecute her because of these connections.
How would they even do that?
The alleged plan was to pretend she wasn't drinking, instruct the grand jury not to indict, and then scrub the articles from the Ellsworth American's website and delete any related comments. A complete cover-up, essentially.
And Carlotta Basano later said the case just didn't survive the process.
Correct. Which the source contrasts with the claim that it never even got to an indictment stage because of this alleged interference.
And the victim's father, Arthur Smith Sr.
He clearly felt the case wasn't handled properly. The source mentions him questioning why there wasn't an immediate blood alcohol test, feeling his son was unfairly blamed.
It's heartbreaking. And the sheriff, William Clark, what was his alleged role?
The source highlights a statement attributed to him. We did what we needed to do.
Which sounds ambiguous at best.
The source interprets it as basically an admission, a confirmation that they covered it up because Isle was connected.
And the articles, are they really gone from the Ellsworth American site?
According to the source's checks, yes. while the Bangor Daily News apparently still has articles about the incident.
The Ellsworth American Archives allegedly show nothing about that specific fatal accident or Arthur Smith Jr. or Sr.
It strengthens the argument about information being deliberately removed, doesn't it?
It really does. Okay, so Povich is getting ready to retire. The photo becomes an issue again.
Right. The source claims he absolutely needed to get that photograph back before he left office and Carlotta Basano took over.
Why then specifically?
To prevent whoever had it, the alleged blackmailer, from potentially releasing it publicly once he was out and Basano was in.
And how did he allegedly get it back?
The source says he hired a burglar.
Hired a burglar?
Seriously. To steal the photo from someone named Jim while Jim was out. And crucially, no charges were ever filed. No investigation seems to have happened.
Just retrieved, problem solved, outside the law.
But that's the allegation. Which leads us to Carlotta Basano taking over as DA.
And the source describes her tenure in pretty stark terms, doesn't it? A reign of terror against men.
Very strong language, yes. It suggests a dramatic shift.
Is there anything more specific?
Well, there's a quote allegedly attributed to Basano, supposedly said multiple times.
Well,
all men deserve to go to jail for something they have done.
if that was actually said, that indicates a serious bias.
To put it mildly. And the source mentions she hired Mary Kellett as assistant DA, and together with others like William Entwistle and Paul Kavanaugh, they allegedly created this cycle of misconduct.
Primarily targeting men.
That's the focus of the allegation, yes. Which brings us to the alleged invention of a domestic violence crisis.
Invented? How so?
The claim is pretty cynical. It suggests they took normal wintertime arguments, maybe fueled by, coffee brandy.
A Maine tradition, some might say.
Perhaps. But they allegedly exaggerated this bickering, framed it as a massive surge in domestic violence in Hancock and Washington counties.
Even though the actual rates weren't higher than elsewhere in Maine?
Apparently not. And the motive alleged profit. It was supposedly a very profitable scam.
Okay, this is where next step comes in, right? The domestic violence project.
Exactly. Described as a key part of this alleged scheme to funnel men specifically into the court system.
How did it supposedly work?
Next step is described as almost working for the DA's office, helping to get protection from contact orders issued really quickly.
So after a domestic dispute happens...
The source claims women were rushed or strongly encouraged to go to next step.
Yeah.
They were coached on exactly what to put in their protection order requests to make sure a judge would approve it.
Coached how? Like what to say?
The source mentions specific tactics, suggesting they emphasize any physical pushing or touching or how emotionally hurt they were. The coaches would then allegedly kind of twist the words and write them down to maximize impact.
Okay, so the order gets granted.
Yeah.
Then what?
Then comes what the source calls phase 2. Get that man.
Catchy name. What does it mean?
Basically, once the order is served, any contact means automatic arrest for the man.
Any contact, even if the woman initiates it, or if they've reconciled.
That's the claim. Any violation, no matter the circumstance, leads to arrest.
And the goal of that is
To
get that violation. Because a violation, the source states, means automatic jail time, bail, fines, probation. It feeds the system.
So the initial court hearing, the arraignment, isn't really about guilt or innocence.
According to the source, no. It's described as a kangaroo hearing.
A kangaroo hearing. Why?
Because its main purpose is allegedly just for the DA's office to figure out how much bail the defendant can actually afford to pay. It's about the money.
And the lawyer provided.
The lawyer of the day.
Also alleged to be compromised. The claim is they're essentially working for the DA, not the defendant they're supposed to represent.
That's a fundamental breakdown of the legal process.
It is. And it allegedly gets worse with certain court-appointed lawyers. Source names. Jeff Toothaker again, Robert Van Horn, Charles Halford, William Blaisdell.
What are they accused of?
Being master manipulators who actively collude with the DA's office.
Collude how?
Through lying, manipulating evidence, allegedly withholding evidence that could help the defendant even manufacturing evidence against their own client to keep them stuck in the system.
Just staggering. And the driver behind all this manipulation is
money, financial incentives. For the courts, through fees and fines. For the lawyers, through these appointments. For advocacy groups like Next Step, through grants tied to case numbers.
So the system itself becomes self-perpetuating, driven by profit rather than justice or helping victims.
That's the core accusation. The source even includes a summary, I think, from ChatGPT analyzing the documents, saying it creates a cycle of exploitation where financial gain takes precedence over the needs of actual domestic violence victims.
And didn't the source mention something specific about the DA's secretary having unusual powers?
Yes, that's another layer to this. The claim is that the district attorney's secretary was somehow granted the powers of a police officer.
A secretary with police powers, like arrest powers.
Having police powers usually implies authority like making arrests, investigating. It seems extraordinary for an administrative role in a DA's office.
That definitely sounds like a massive potential for overreach, doesn't it? Blurring all sorts of lines.
Absolutely. It raises huge questions about accountability, oversight. How could that even happen? And it adds to this overall picture of a system potentially operating without proper checks and balances.
Okay, let's circle back to the next step financials. The source cited their annual report.
Yeah, the 2015-2016 report, it allegedly showed significant revenue, mostly from government grants.
But where was the money going?
That's the issue raised. Reportedly, a very large chunk went to salaries, while a disproportionately small amount was spent on actual direct client services, helping the victims.
So high overhead, low direct impact.
That's the interpretation presented. The source highlights this contrast, questioning the priorities. Is it about outreach and maintaining the organization, or about tackling root causes and providing substantial help? And it's public money funding this, allegedly.
So putting it all together, based on these documents.
It paints a really disturbing picture, doesn't it, of alleged systemic corruption in Hancock County.
Yeah, from the Povich-era photo to the newspaper's alleged role, the handling of the Isle case, Basano's alleged agenda, and this whole next step system designed to exploit domestic situations for profit.
Complete with alleged collusion from lawyers and even unusual powers granted within the DA's office itself. It suggests a deeply entrenched network, if the sources are accurate.
It's a lot to take in. Deep Dive gives a clearer understanding of the allegations outlined in the documents you shared. The claims about deception, funneling men into the courts via next step, and the potential overreach like the secretary having police powers.
These are serious claims about how the justice system might have been compromised there.
Go ahead.
If, as these sources allege, a program like Next Step, supposedly designed to help, could be twisted into a mechanism for profit and control, what does that say about oversight?
Right. What other well-meaning programs, maybe not just in Maine, but anywhere, could be vulnerable to similar exploitation?
And maybe more importantly, what kind of safeguards do communities really need to prevent these kinds of alleged abuses and ensure their local institutions are actually serving the public interest, not just, lining pockets or pushing agendas?
That's the real question, isn't it? Something to think about. Thanks for tuning into the Despicable Maine Deep Dive podcast. Remember, living in Maine is theft of your life.